So I guess a little bit about me is, so my name is A.D. Atoli, it's just the 2 letters, A.D. I'm from a small town called Center. It's about 2 hours south of here. It's about 5,000 folks. Grew up there, graduated in 2005, so I'm turning 34 here in a few weeks. I was a valedictorian coming out of high school, so I ended up going to Rice, and then I graduated out of there. Somehow ended up on the president's honor roll. I think I was probably one of the very few public school kids at Rice. And then at Rice, I decided I wanted to go fight in Afghanistan with the Marines. That's when the wars were still going. I thought it was ridiculous what the Taliban was doing to Christians and women over there. And I know a lot of us felt that way, and I wanted to go get some. But we all know what they say, man plans and God decides. So I was 19 when I decided to go to the Marine Corps, and I was 28 before I finally ended up there. So they just kept pushing the application back, won't work out this year, go next year. So my first job out of college ended up being working for Congressman Louis Gohmert in his DC office. I loved the congressman. We still get along great to this day. Loved his staff. A lot of them are actually still in DC and they're helping me now with the campaign. Hated DC. It is exactly what you think it is. Okay, it is a complete swamp. They're not working in the public interest. And it's not because the people are bad, it's the culture there. So I could only stand it for about 5 months and I ended up leaving. And I ended up moving back to East Texas, and somehow through different things, I ended up roughnecking in the oil field. So here's a guy, scored 99th percentile nationally on the SATs, 99th percentile nationally on the ASVAB, which is the military entrance exam, 99th percentile nationally on the Department of Defense military officers test, and I'm out here pulling slips and slinging sledgehammers and mopping floors with the boys, and I was loving it. So I stayed there. I stayed there for years until the next oil downturn. So I started out as a floor hand, worked my way up to a motorman, which is the person that fixes all the machinery on the rig. Then I worked up to being a derrick man, which is the person that fixes and does operations in the heights. And then I worked up to being a driller, which is the person that manages a rig. And for those who have never been on an oil rig, it's roughly 15 stories high, about an acre big, roughly $25 million. And we drill 3 to 4 mile deep oil and natural gas wells. And these are all multi-million-dollar wells. So I don't know why they wanted a 25-year-old to manage the whole thing, but that's what they made me do. I didn't think I was ready, but they said I was, so that's what I did. Luckily, I didn't get any of my guys hurt, thank God. I did get close a couple of times, because we know how young men are with their force. I guess I'll leave it at that. But by God's grace, I didn't get anyone hurt, went really well, and me and the boys drilled multiple oil and natural gas wells through East Texas, North Texas, West Texas, and New Mexico that are pumping oil to refineries in Texas right now. Love the job. Oil downturn came, so of course layoffs come, and that's when I finally finished up my Marine Corps application. Ended up going to the Marine Corps. I got chosen. I was on the commandant's list there during Marine officer training. And then I was stationed in Camp Lejeune, North Carolina with 1st Battalion, 10th Marines as a Marine artillery officer. And there I was the officer in charge of units ranging from a little over 4 to a little over 100. And if anyone has heard of Lieutenant Colonel Scheller, this is the Marine who criticized the Biden Afghan withdrawal. So he was one of my commanding officers during that time, and as of last week, he's come out and strongly endorsed my campaign. So we're now working with him, and he's helping us get a lot of national help for this campaign. So I guess that's a little bit of my history. And so the reason I'm running now, I got out of the Marine Corps last year, is I'm absolutely disgusted with what we're seeing coming out of DC. You know, the road that these career politicians and these swamp monsters have taken our country down is unacceptable. Right? The root cause of every issue that we argue about today, right? CRT, open borders, a healthcare system that does not work for the middle class, you know, public schools in certain communities that do not work for parents or teachers, the national debt, inflation. The root cause of every problem is DC. And it's federal government overreach and federal government incompetency. And we here at the local level are the ones that have to deal with those symptoms now. And you know, I'm not the only one saying this, obviously, right? I think we're all starting to realize that we can't just let these people that think politics is a job and a career to do this to us, and that we all have to get involved, right? And what that involvement looks like is different for different people, depending on your background and experiences, right? A lot of the precinct chairs, the stuff that happens at the local level, is way more important than what happens at the federal level, because y'all can actually change policy by putting pressure on politicians. And that is how our country was designed to work. It was supposed to be a country of local self-government, where citizens just like us can affect policy. And that's why we see DC the way it is now. Because everything is so centralized in DC, regular people can't affect policy anymore. You know, you can affect policy here in Bowie County and definitely in Texas, but you can't affect policy in DC. Too many special interests, too much money. And so I'm not the only one running for federal office to do something about that big roadblock and swamp we got 2,000 miles that way. Right? We got guys like Joe Kent in Washington State. We got guys like Tony Cowden in Carolina. We got Luttrell down in Houston. And I'm working with a lot of these guys in the Veteran Candidate Coalition to actually get Congress back working for the country. And I've heard some people say, well, I don't even know if that's possible anymore. And I'm sure some people in here believe that. Well, I'm going to say that our problems are man-made so they can be solved by man. And I didn't say that, JFK said that. And that's how people used to think back then. And there's still people here that think like that now. They're just not in DC. They're the people that I learned from in the oil field and my mentors in the Marine Corps. And they're my military friends like Joe Kent, like Tony Cowden, that are across the country that we're running, and we're tired of what these politicians have done to us, and we are now planning to go on offense. When I say offense, let me be clear. I'm not talking about giving speeches. I'm not talking about fighting on Twitter. And I'm not talking about posting cool memes that rip the other side. When I say go on offense, what I mean is using military and business strategy in the political sphere. And what that means is analyzing the political landscape, figuring out where the hills and valleys are in policy ideas and proposals, figuring out which policies are doable, building coalitions to focus on those certain policies, and then mass manpower on certain policies to create change and effects. And this is something that they teach in military officer strategy training. And also, anyone that runs a business, you're already doing these things even if you don't know it. But the problem is, we got DC stacked with lawyers and people that haven't really worked a day in their lives, and they don't understand how to create these effects. But our society knows how to create these effects. And so one big thing that needs to be done if we want to go on offense is we have to stop calling ourselves the party of small government. okay? Because that is a defensive strategy. We're really good at stopping or slowing down the crazy stuff the Dems want to do, right? Like Green New Deal, socialism, Medicare for all. We can stop them. We can slow them down. But when we get the ball in our hands, and it's time to actually fix public schools, get pro-choice, when it's time to get rid of welfare so that we can save the nuclear American family, so that we can bring God back to our society, when it's time to fix healthcare, we don't have an offense to do it. Right? Because for decades, what have you heard Republicans say? Hey,
well, we're going to fix the problem, and it never gets fixed. And Trump went in there and he fixed the problems, and the mainstream media, the communists in the media, pilloried for it. And because he was solving problems.
And we'll open up the floor here in a minute.
No,
right?
And not told you.
Absolutely, absolutely. And so if we want to actually solve these problems, we just need to go on offense, okay? So Republicans have been talking about cutting welfare for decades, correct? How many politicians have we heard talk about cutting welfare? It doesn't happen because they know that the American public is going to ask, you're going to cut welfare, but how are you going to take care of that bottom 5-10% of poor people? So if we're the party of local government, then what we could propose is all the money the federal government spends on welfare, you take it, give it straight to the counties. And the counties can administer welfare, and they can make sure the people that need help get it, maybe for a few months, and the people that abuse it, people living on generational poverty, cut them off. And you do that for 10, 20, 30 years, American people get used to it happening at the county level, you can get the federal government and taxes completely out of it. That is an offensive strategy. Healthcare. We talk about repealing and replacing Obamacare, right? We all know the reasons why. We know what that's done to our health insurance bills. We know Obamacare is the reason why my mechanic had needed heart surgery and he couldn't afford his insurance anymore, so he had to wait 6 months to go get Medicare. But it's a defensive strategy. What are we going to replace Obamacare with? Raise your hand if you know. No one knows. So it's not an offensive strategy. What is an offensive strategy is party of local government, right? All the money that Obamacare gives to Medicaid and all the money that Obamacare gives to insurance companies, you take it and you block grant to the states. And the states can decide, hey, the bottom 5-10% of people, let's figure out how to help them, right? California is going to do their socialized deal. Let them try it, let them fail, whatever. And Texas is going to do a community-based health program because we know our communities can take care of ourselves. That is the party of local government. And what I just said right now, I didn't come up with this. This is already what we wanted to replace it with. But the problem is, Paul Ryan, who I don't think has had a real job in his life, he took 35 minutes and a PowerPoint presentation to explain what we want to replace it with. And I just did it in 4 words, party of local government. And that's how you here can argue with your family and friends to say, this is why we need to repeal and replace Obamacare. And here's a solution. Not just what we are against, but what we're for. You can say the exact same thing for open borders. Congress is spending all this money, and now because of the Biden administration, we have this disgrace 500 miles that way. Everyone knows it, but it's still open. Millions of people coming through. I have a friend in the Border Patrol. This is literally the worst they've ever seen ever in the history of the Border Patrol. So what is the solution to that? We're the party of local government. When Congress passes bills for border security, instead of letting the federal government administer the money, send it straight to the border states, right? Then Texas and Arizona and New Mexico can build whatever border security they want on their borders. And we know even Democrats in those states want border security. Right? And this, you do this little by little. You could do this for almost every issue we talk about. Education, same thing. Do it little by little. That's how you start decentralizing federal government power. And that's how you start dealing with stuff like this inflation problem and the national debt problem. Okay? So that's what we mean when me and all these other candidates are talking about finally going on offense. Because come 2023, we're going to win the House back, right? Absolutely, for sure. Come 24, we're going to win back the White House, right? We all know it's going to happen. What needs to happen, though, is we don't just get the ball in our hands, we need to score touchdowns. And if there's any policy that conservatives like that does not already exist, it's because the rhinos have not let it happen. Okay? So the only way to fix that is you go on offense. And it's not just going to be me. It's not just going to be any one of us here. It's going to be a group effort. And it's already happening, and I'm only one in that wave that's coming to D.C. Because there's a bunch of patriots out there. We're done with it. We're done with these politicians. They don't represent us. They don't think in our interests. And that's what this campaign has been about the entire time. So I'm going to stop right there, and I'm going to open up the floor to any kind of questions. In general, my name is A.D. Atoli. I will be your congressman representing all of Northeast Texas come January 2023. Day one, I will report to the Freedom Caucus, to my heroes, guys like Jim Jordan and Chip Roy, to see what I can do as part of the team to actually push for results. I'm the only oil and gas candidate in this four-way race. I'm the only military candidate in this four-way race, and I'm the only America First PACT endorsed candidate in this four-way race. All right, y'all, well, thank you so much. The campaign is going very, very well. You can grab a yard sign if you want, and if you can go on roughneckforcongress.com, and if you can just put in your info, we'll keep you updated on the campaign, and then if we run out of yard signs, we can get you some more. And then if you wouldn't mind chipping in like $5, $10, that would be excellent as well. But go to roughneckforcongress.com. That's how you can stay in touch with everything that we're doing. Thank you for your time.